One of the most somber realities of contemporary history is that for the United States, war has seldom been solely about survival, justice, or freedom. Rather, it has often revolved around monetary gain. Each conflict evolved not just into a battlefield for soldiers and weaponry, but also into a lucrative opportunity for financial enterprises. While ordinary citizens sent their sons off to face mortal danger and families tightened their belts to ration food, an invisible financial machinery transformed bloodshed into profit. The United States did not merely engage in warfare. It learned how to capitalize on it, turning tragedy into a business model that shaped the global financial landscape we navigate today. To grasp this phenomenon, one must revisit the First World War, often referred to as the Great War, which erupted in 1914. Initially, the United States remained on the sidelines. As Europe bled profusely, Britain, France, Germany, and Austria-Hungary were all embroiled in a conflict that consumed lives and resources at an alarming rate. Millions marched into battle. Artillery shells fell by the millions. Expenses mounted beyond what any national treasury could adequately manage. It was during this chaos that the United States identified its first significant opportunity. Fast forward to World War II, and we see this model refined on an even larger scale. Europe once again descended into chaos, prompting American industrial might to rush in to fill the void left behind. Franklin D. Roosevelt declared that America would become the arsenal of democracy. By December 1941, when the United States officially entered the war, its factories were already operating at full capacity, churning out ships, planes, tanks, and ammunition in quantities never witnessed before in history. Yet what is crucial to note is that the financial machinery was also running at full steam. The Treasury issued war bonds while the Federal Reserve provided essential support for these initiatives. Regular citizens were encouraged once more to view their investments as acts of patriotism. Over 85 million Americans purchased war bonds during this period, raising more than $185 billion. To put this figure into perspective, it accounted for significantly more than half of all wartime expenditures. The financial system had mastered a formula: repackage sacrifice as investment and transform citizens into creditors of last resort. Meanwhile, corporations such as Boeing, General Motors, and Ford shifted from civilian production lines to military contracts that guaranteed profits, often irrespective of operational efficiency. The government facilitated funding. Factories produced armaments. Shareholders reaped dividends. This deepening connection between capital and power transformed warfare from merely a tragic event to an economic engine driving growth. As bombs exploded on battlefields around the world, another quiet revolution unfolded within finance: the end of the gold standard. During wartime, the United States suspended the free convertibility of gold to safeguard its reserves. This decision had far-reaching implications for both domestic and international economies. With gold no longer serving as a reliable benchmark for currency value, nations began exploring alternative monetary systems that could adapt swiftly to shifting economic landscapes created by global conflicts. In this environment of rapid evolution and adaptation, a new era in financial policy emerged, one where governments increasingly relied on debt to fund their activities rather than traditional asset-backed currencies. This shift laid groundwork for future economic strategies employed during subsequent conflicts and crises. As we reflect on these pivotal moments in history, it becomes apparent how intertwined finance and warfare have become, a relationship that continues to shape our world today. The dollar evolved into something far more significant than a mere currency. It became a powerful demand backed by the might of the American government, its industrial output, and military strength. Following the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944, this transformation was formalized. The dollar was elevated to the status of the world's reserve currency. This monumental shift was a direct consequence of the war, which turned America's financial prowess into an unprecedented global dominance in finance. Consider this carefully. While wars ravaged Europe, they simultaneously enriched and fortified the United States. Each bond sold, each loan extended, and every factory converted for war production laid the groundwork for America to emerge not only victorious on battlefields, but also as the epicenter of modern financial systems. The military machine operated not just as an arsenal of defense, it served as an engine for economic growth. However, this narrative does not conclude in 1945. The Cold War that followed marked a significant chapter characterized not only by political tension but also by financial warfare. Military spending surged dramatically during this time. Entire industries, including aerospace, electronics, and oil, were fueled by defense budgets that seemingly never ceased to grow. Economists referred to this phenomenon as military Keynesianism, a concept suggesting that government expenditure on military endeavors could effectively sustain economic stability and avert depressions. Across the Atlantic Ocean, American industries and banks emerged as both suppliers and financiers of democracy. Financial institutions on Wall Street like J.P. Morgan forged unprecedented agreements with British and French governments. Morgan alone orchestrated billions of dollars in loans while acting as a procurement agent, shipping American wheat, steel, coal, and ammunition across the ocean. To put this in perspective, billions during the early 20th century represented sums so colossal that they eclipsed even the federal budget itself. And all of this was done with interest attached. Every shell that detonated on the Western Front carried not only explosives but also debt obligations owed to American financiers. What began as an emergency measure transformed into a long-term strategy. The United States managed to weave warfare into the very fabric of its financial architecture, making it a structural component rather than an anomaly. Here lies an underlying truth. Once you establish a system where military expenditures drive profits, there is always an incentive for new conflicts to arise. Military contractors flourish under such conditions, banks enjoy increased activity, and politicians benefit from heightened funding and support for their initiatives. Yet what about ordinary citizens? They bear the brunt of these dynamics through inflation, increased taxes, and mounting debts. By the time the Vietnam War erupted in the 1960s, this intricate formula had been thoroughly integrated into society's framework. Military conflict ceased to be viewed solely as a matter of political or ideological struggle. Instead, it was regarded as a crucial economic lever. The cost of the Vietnam War ultimately exceeded $100 billion, a staggering sum in that era. Yet despite the human toll and eventual military setbacks, financial mechanisms continued to operate seamlessly. Military contractors provided helicopters, aircraft, weapons, and even napalm at guaranteed prices, designed to ensure profitability irrespective of outcomes on the battlefield. Banks financed deficits through robust bond markets designed for sustained returns. In turn, average Americans found themselves shouldering increased burdens through high taxation and rampant inflation stemming from these ongoing conflicts. As tensions rose globally and military operations expanded, it became clear that this cycle would remain entrenched within America's economic strategy for years to come. During the late 1960s and throughout the 70s, inflation emerged as a glaring indicator of how military expenditures distort the economy. President Lyndon Johnson famously declared a dual commitment to both guns and butter, advocating for the Vietnam War abroad, while simultaneously promoting his ambitious Great Society initiatives at home. However, the harsh reality proved to be quite different. Deficit spending flooded the economic system, leading to a severance of the dollar's gold peg. In 1971, President Richard Nixon made a historic decision to officially abandon the gold standard, announcing that foreign governments could no longer exchange dollars for gold. This pivotal moment marked a transformation in monetary policy. The dollar transitioned into a fiat currency supported not by precious metals but by trust in the American government and, crucially, its unmatched military and economic prowess. The Vietnam War did not merely alter geopolitical dynamics. It fundamentally reshaped the nature of currency itself. Fast forward to the tumultuous oil shocks of the 70s, where financial strategies became intricately intertwined with warfare and resource management. The establishment of the petrodollar system ensured that oil transactions were conducted exclusively in U.S. dollars. This arrangement solidified the status of American currency as indispensable on a global scale, even in absence of gold backing. Simultaneously, a robust military presence in the Middle East served to bolster this fragile yet powerful economic framework. Consequently, money and war ceased to exist as separate discussions. They became two sides of the same coin. Now let us shift our focus to 1991 and examine the Gulf War. Iraq's invasion of Kuwait posed not only a significant threat to regional stability but also jeopardized global oil markets, prompting an immediate response from a coalition led by the United States. While the war itself was relatively brief, It resulted in substantial financial gains for defense contractors and oil-related corporations. The conflict was broadcast live on television, allowing viewers to witness both military action and corporate profits unfold in real time. Military technology companies showcased their cutting-edge precision weaponry, which instantly drove up stock prices. For many corporations involved, this conflict served as both a testing ground for new technologies and an elaborate marketing campaign aimed at demonstrating their capabilities. Then came a watershed moment at the turn of our century: the September 11th terrorist attacks followed by the ensuing war on terror. At this juncture, financialization of conflict reached unprecedented heights. The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq placed an enormous financial burden on the United States, approximately $6 trillion when factoring in long-term veteran assistance and interest payments on debt accrued during these military operations. This staggering figure can feel almost abstract due to its enormity. However, consider its implications. Such a debt burden could have funded free college education for generations or revitalized crumbling infrastructure or even transformed healthcare systems across the nation. In essence, these historical events illustrate how deeply intertwined military endeavors are with economic practices. Each war has not only reshaped political landscapes but also redefined how currency operates within those frameworks, demonstrating that money is often just another tool wielded in pursuit of power and control over resources. Instead, it fueled a cycle in which defense contractors like Orion Dynamics, Titan Technologies, and Vanguard Solutions became synonymous with not innovation or civil progress, but rather with their role in perpetuating endless conflicts. Once again, the method of financing followed a familiar pattern. Bonds were issued while the National Reserve maintained low interest rates to sustain the burgeoning debt. Ordinary taxpayers bore the brunt of a deficit that swelled into the national debt we navigate today. Wars justified under the pretense of safeguarding freedom or promoting democracy doubled as conduits for wealth and power benefiting the financial and corporate elite. The United States officially entered the war in 1917. However, by that point, its financial system was already intricately tied to the outcome of the conflict. A defeat for Britain or France would spell disaster for Wall Street as well. Consequently, the line separating national security from financial interests became increasingly blurred. Ordinary Americans were led to believe that it was their patriotic duty to purchase Liberty bonds, debt instruments marketed through emotionally charged propaganda urging citizens to lend their savings to their government. Posters depicted Uncle Sam pointing directly at them with his iconic message, "I want you." Here lies the hidden irony. America seldom wins these wars in any conventional sense. The withdrawal from Vietnam marked an end to that conflict, leaving behind a fractured nation. Iraq descended into chaos following its invasion, and Afghanistan was abandoned after 2 decades of struggle. Yet financially speaking, these wars have never resulted in failure. Contracts were fulfilled, loans were repaid, and interest continued to accrue relentlessly. War transformed into a lucrative enterprise regardless of its outcome. For those perched at the pinnacle of the system, perpetual conflicts became not a dilemma but a thriving business model. Now let's juxtapose this against contemporary times. The military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned about in his farewell address back in 1961 has become inseparable from America's financial framework. Defense spending persists as one of the largest components of the federal budget, consistently surpassing $800 billion annually. Entire industries and regions across the country depend on it for survival. Wall Street reaps substantial profits from financing military endeavors while politicians secure voter support by championing such expenditures. This cycle continues ad infinitum. What does this mean for you today? It signifies that every dollar you possess, the inflation you experience when grocery shopping, and the taxes deducted from your paycheck are all intertwined with a financial system that has normalized war as a perpetual state of affairs. Whether bombs are falling or not, this mechanism operates unceasingly in the background. The financial education most individuals never receive reveals that wars are waged not solely on battlefields but also within your wallet, affecting your cost of living and undermining your financial independence. Consider recent global crises for context. The financial collapse of 2008 was not instigated by warfare. However, the scenario bore unsettling similarities. Government bailouts flowed freely while corporate profits were safeguarded, leaving everyday citizens high and dry. This intertwining of defense expenditures with personal finances underscores a significant reality. Individuals remain entrapped within systems designed to prioritize corporate interests over their welfare. As inflation rises and economic stability falters, understanding these connections becomes crucial for recognizing how deeply ingrained militarization impacts both individual livelihoods and societal structures alike. Warfare now extends beyond traditional combat. It's embedded within economic policies that shape our daily realities. An ongoing battle fought without guns, but with fiscal strategies that dictate where resources flow and who benefits most from conflict-driven economies. In essence, this is not merely about military engagements abroad, but rather an intricate web affecting every aspect of life back home. A reminder that we must remain vigilant regarding how power dynamics play out on both local and global stages. During the global health crisis, an astounding sum of money was funneled into economic stimulus and assistance efforts. However, a significant portion of these funds found their way to financial markets and large corporations rather than reaching the everyday workers who truly needed support. The financial mechanisms honed during wartime, such as deficit financing, bond issuance, and corporate guarantees, have now been repurposed for use in peacetime scenarios. This integration of military strategies with the financial system raises some pressing concerns about our current socio-economic landscape. The unsettling reality is that once you grasp this narrative, you begin to see conflicts and crises not as aberrations but rather as inherent characteristics of our world. These tumultuous events often serve as opportunities for those adept at maneuvering through debts, currencies, and limited resources. Conversely, for many individuals, these situations can quickly become traps from which escape seems impossible. Inflation gnaws away at savings while economic bubbles inevitably burst. The chain of debt tightens, leaving countless people struggling to cope. In this volatile environment, the financial system thrives on instability because such upheaval breeds dependency. This dependency translates into control over individuals and communities alike. So what lessons can we draw from this? It goes beyond merely acknowledging that war is detrimental or that governments may be corrupt. These points are painfully obvious. A more profound lesson lies in understanding the inseparable bond between money and power. Each major conflict throughout modern history has intertwined financial interests with ideological battles, revealing a complex web that shapes our reality. Recognizing this connection offers a clearer lens through which to view the world around us. When you hear calls for intervention or witness increasing defense budgets, or even when you notice your own cost of living escalating, it becomes crucial to question not only who the enemy is but also who stands to benefit from these dynamics. As time went on, this intertwining of warfare and commerce deepened further still. The very fabric of American society began adapting to accommodate this new reality where military engagements transformed not only political landscapes but also economic ones. The notion of sacrifice took on new dimensions as citizens grappled with their roles in supporting a war economy while hoping for victory abroad. This perspective embodies what true financial literacy entails. It transcends basic budgeting, investing techniques, or saving strategies. Instead, it delves into the very fabric of how systems operate, whom they serve, and how historical patterns consistently reemerge over time. Economic history isn't merely a collection of figures recorded in textbooks. It's about human experiences, lives disrupted by wars, sacrifices made along the way, empires rising and collapsing, and the hidden structures of debt and profit that shape every headline you encounter today. Thus, when someone insists that war is a matter of honor, democracy, or freedom, remember there is also an underlying layer involving balance sheets, interest payments, and corporate profits at play. While history may not repeat itself verbatim, the rhythms established by our financial systems ensure that its echoes resonate through time. If your aspiration is genuine wealth or authentic financial independence, it's essential to look beyond mere slogans and propaganda to comprehend what drives the machinery of money and power. Ignoring these realities could have dire consequences. If you fail to understand how this system operates, it can ultimately overwhelm you without mercy. If this has opened up a new perspective for you, there are many fascinating answers to be discovered within history. Join us as we explore the depths of time and uncover the hidden truths waiting to be found. Moreover, as military expenditures soared throughout subsequent conflicts such as World War II and conflicts in Korea and Vietnam, America's reliance on wartime spending became even more pronounced. With each engagement came a renewed focus on military-industrial partnerships where private firms collaborated closely with government entities to manufacture weapons and supplies needed for troops overseas. In essence, each war became more than just a struggle between nations. It morphed into an intricate web of financial transactions and obligations that spanned continents. Thus began an era where patriotism intertwined seamlessly with profit motives, a complex relationship that continues to influence American foreign policy decisions today. Understanding this historical context reveals how deeply interconnected economics are with matters of national defense and identity within America's psyche. As citizens reflect on past wars fought not solely for ideological reasons but also driven by fiscal imperatives, it becomes evident why discussions surrounding military intervention remain fraught with complexity even now in our modern age. Celebrities marched through cities, urging the public to invest in war bonds. Even children participated by collecting coins for savings stamps, which could be exchanged for these bonds. This marked a historic moment when an entire nation was financially mobilized for conflict. However, beneath this patriotic fervor lay a grimmer reality. While ordinary citizens lent a few dollars, the true beneficiaries were the bankers and industrialists who held the reins of power. Factories flourished, profits surged, and the influence of financial moguls like J.P. Morgan over governments reached unprecedented levels. A new precedent emerged. Wars could be financed not just through gold or taxation, but also via debt sold to the populace and backed by private capital. This mechanism has endured through time,